Behind the Line, episode number 30. I'm your host, KC. Follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. Leave me a 5-star rating on iTunes. We've got another week and another dose of gasoline added to the dumpster fire that is the Cleveland Browns. Baker Mayfield had been relatively silent the past couple of weeks. He had been allowing his head coach, Freddie Kitchens, to take the lead and being a dumbass. But you just had to know that Baker Mayfield wasn't going to allow his head coach to steal all of that limelight away for too long. Apparently, Odell Beckham has been playing through the season with a sports hernia. It happened during the preseason or in training camp. The Browns training staff elected not to do surgery. If the surgery would have been done, then Odell Beckham would have been back in the starting lineup right around week 3. Obviously, this was a mistake by the training or the medical staff in Cleveland. Beckham has been far from productive this season, at least from what we're used to seeing from him in the past. So now we know part of the reason why Odell Beckham hasn't been his usual self this season. The other reason why he hasn't been as productive is Baker Mayfield is the guy that's trying to throw him the football. So Baker Mayfield comes out and he tells the media that the situation wasn't handled right by the Browns staff. He said it wasn't handled the right way in our training room. And I actually agree with him. I agree 100% with what Baker Mayfield is saying. What I don't agree with is him turning this into a public matter. This is why guys like Nick Saban or Bill Belichick don't let their coaches and players talk to the media. I don't think that Baker Mayfield had any malicious intent with his comments about the Browns training staff. He's just being honest. The problem is, he doesn't know when to shut the fuck up. You don't throw your training staff under the bus publicly like this. This is really a minor issue, but the problem with it is this is a recurring theme in Cleveland. If this was just a one-off, it would be a news story for a day and then no big deal. But this has happened time after time after time in Cleveland this year. I feel like we've been talking more this season about the Browns' antics than their play calling on the field. We analyze their comments more than the plethora of mistakes that they make during games. I said before the season that this team was a recipe for disaster. Now it appears Odell Beckham is preparing to jump out of this burning building in Cleveland. Jay Glazer from Fox Sports is reporting that OBJ wants out of Cleveland. Who can fucking blame him? If I'm an NFL player, there's 2 franchises I want nothing to do with. Cleveland and Cincinnati. Glazer was actually the first to report last year that the Giants were moving on from Odell Beckham. So I actually believe that this is true. OBJ's been non-committal when asked about his future in Cleveland. There have actually been reports that he's approached opposing players and coaches in pregame warm-ups, begging them to get him out of Cleveland. You got to remember, it wasn't his choice to end up with the Browns. The Giants traded him there, likely with the intent and knowledge that he would be a non-factor. I mean, Cleveland is where NFL careers go to die, so it was a good move on the Giants' part. Beckham's been unhappy with his role in the offense all season. He doesn't have the best relationship with this coaching staff. Yet, to hear Freddie Kitchens tell it, he and Odell Beckham are the best of friends. There's nothing to see here. Everything's just fine. Not that it matters what Freddie Kitchens thinks or believes, because he isn't going to be coaching this team this time next month anyway. This team needs an experienced head coach. Baker Mayfield needs direction and leadership. He needs somebody that's going to hold him accountable. Basically, what he needs is the opposite of Freddie Kitchens. I think that Ron Rivera would be an ideal candidate to take over this Browns job. He's a defensive-minded coach, would have plenty to work with on that side of the ball in Cleveland. He's got experience dealing with young, dramatic quarterbacks. He led Cam Newton to a Super Bowl. So he's used to dealing with some of the problems that they have in Cleveland. Now, with that being said, will the Browns make a smart hiring decision like that? Probably not. This franchise loves to hire head coaches. They just don't like to keep them around. Since 2010, the Browns have had 7 head coaches. Check out this list. Eric Mangini, Pat Shurmur, Rod Judzinski, Mike Pettin, Hugh Jackson, Greg Williams, Freddie Kitchens. Half of those guys I just listed are no longer coaching in the NFL in any capacity. More than likely, John Dorsey or the Cleveland ownership will go out and they'll hire some obscure coach that we've never heard of. And this time next season, we will be talking about Cleveland searching for a new head coach. Okay, let's move on. Let's get to my NFL power rankings. I started doing these power rankings about 2 or 3 weeks ago. When I started the power rankings, I had the Patriots at number 1. And I told you guys that I would not move them out of the number 1 spot until they gave me a reason to do so. Now, I dropped them after their loss to Houston last week, and now, after their loss to the Chiefs on Sunday, even though they got screwed over, and I think that they should have won that game, New England is out of my top 5 power rankings. Now, who has taken their spot? You'll probably be surprised. Many people have moved Kansas City into the top 5. I couldn't disagree more. I'm still not sold on this Chiefs team. Now, I have no doubt in the ability of Patrick Mahomes. I just cannot trust the Kansas City defense. So, starting at the number 5 spot, I've got the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I was down on this team early in the season because Kirk Cousins was folding under the immense pressure that he was under to live up to his contract. Now, ever since he came out on radio and apologized to Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, and everyone else that was watching him play football on Sundays, the Vikings have been on fire. Top 10 offense, top 10 defense. They've got Dalvin Cook, who is one of the best running backs in the league. They've got 2 elite receivers. They got a good tight end. The only issue I have with Minnesota is that this is a different team on the road. You play this team at home in that dome stadium with that crowd chanting that annoying skull chant. They're damn near impossible to beat. They haven't been beaten at home all season. But all 4 of their losses have come on the road. At 9-4 in what is a loaded NFC, they're going to be going on the road at some point in the playoffs. Matter of fact, even if they beat the Packers in 2 weeks, they still won't win the division because they lost to the Bears earlier this season. Minnesota needs Chicago to beat Green Bay this Sunday at Lambeau to be able to secure at least one home playoff game. All right, number 4, I've got the Seattle Seahawks. Like I told you guys last week, I can't rank Seattle ahead of New Orleans because the Saints beat them at home earlier this season without Drew Brees. The Rams game Sunday was an eye-opener to me. I'll tell you why. When we think of the Seattle offense, we think of Russell Wilson in the passing game. But the Seahawks are the 3rd best rushing offense in the NFL. The Rams did the same thing to Seattle that the Saints did. They built an early lead, and they contained the Seattle rushing attack. They forced Seattle into a pass-happy offense. And for the 2nd time this season, we've been shown that that's the way to beat this team. Russell Wilson doesn't have the weapons around him to come from behind. Force him to have to constantly make plays. And you can force Russell Wilson into mistakes. He was sacked 5 times and took 11 hits against the Rams. Their Week 17 showdown against the 49ers is going to have huge implications on the NFC. It could decide who wins the NFC West. It could decide who's the number 1 seed in the conference. The loser of that game is likely going to drop to the number 5 seed. which is criminal considering how shitty the NFC East is. Neither the Cowboys nor the Eagles deserve to even be in the playoffs, much less host a home playoff game. All right, I've got the Saints at number 3. I was pleasantly surprised by Drew Brees and the offense against the 49ers. That's the best this offense has looked all season. It proves that Brees can still throw the deep ball when needed, and if they can get Jared Cook back from concussion, he's going to be a huge part of this game plan going into the playoffs. It seems like the chemistry between he and Brees is growing with each game. Now, the defense is a bit of a concern. Marcus Davenport is now out for the season. Sheldon Rankins, we found out yesterday, has been placed on IR. They're also down 2 starting linebackers in Kiko Alonso and AJ Klein. The Saints are fucking banged up. They've been fortunate the past 2 years in avoiding injuries to key players. That has not been the case this season. It seems like every playmaker on this team has missed games at some point. But you got to credit Sean Payton. This team continues to find ways to win. They've got 2 guys in Deontay Harris and Taysom Hill that are nightmares to opposing defenses. Like I said on Tuesday, the Saints need to focus on keeping guys healthy these last 3 weeks of the season headed into the playoffs. I got San Francisco at number 2. I can't say it enough. I was wrong about Jimmy Garoppolo. I was thoroughly impressed with how well he played in New Orleans. Pick your poison with this 49ers team. They have an elite rushing attack. They can win with defense. And now they've proven that Jimmy G can put the game in his hands and beat you through the air. The acquisition of Emmanuel Sanders might be the best trade of the year. Kudos to John Lynch for pulling that one off. This team is difficult to defend. And with the defense they have, with Nick Bosa being everywhere on every play, I don't even think the Niners need home field advantage. This team can go on the road and win. It won't be a problem. All right, obviously, number 1 still is the Baltimore Ravens. What the hell can I say about this team that I haven't already said? Sunday's win at Buffalo didn't get a lot of media attention. It wasn't a stylish win like the 49ers win was over the Saints. But I think it was one of the more impressive wins of Baltimore's season. If I told you Lamar Jackson was going to pass for 145 yards and run for less than 4 yards per carry, would you say that the Ravens win that game? Don't lie to yourself. You'd say they lose. But that was his stat line against the Bills. Baltimore won that game with their defense. It looked like the Ravens' defense that we're used to seeing. They held Buffalo to their lowest offensive output of the season. Josh Allen only had 105 yards passing, 209 total yards for the Bills. This is a different Ravens defense than we saw earlier in the season when they gave up over 500 yards in back-to-back games. The addition of Marcus Peters midway through the season has completely changed this defense. Since adding Peters, they're only giving up 175 yards a game through the air. And they weren't defending against scrubs at quarterback during this 7-game stretch. Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, Deshaun Watson, Jared Goff, Jimmy G, all had one of their worst games of the season against this Baltimore defense. At this point in my mind, there's no question that the road to the Super Bowl is going through Baltimore. All right, so that's my power rankings. I wanted to come back to the New England Patriots for a second. The Patriots have a reputation throughout the NFL as being cheaters. They've had 6 players suspended since 2007 for using PEDs. You had the whole Spygate scandal where the Patriots were caught filming the Jets sideline from an unapproved location. Never understood why that was such a big deal. Thought it was blown way out of proportion. Back in 2013, they were accused of falsifying injury reports. Before their first Super Bowl win against the Rams in 2002, they videotaped the Rams walkthrough practice. You had Deflategate in 2015. I mean, I could go on and on and on about things that the Patriots have done. And now this week, the Patriots were once again caught doing something questionable. They were taping the Bungles sideline during their loss to Cleveland on Sunday. Now, the media are making a big deal about it. Bill Belichick has denied any involvement. Of course, no one believes him. Why would anyone believe Belichick at this point? He always denies involvement when confronted with accusations. He kind of reminds me of a mafia boss. Deny everything. I'm going to get to my opinion about Belichick, the Patriots, and cheating in just a second. But let's address these most recent accusations first. Now, do you really think that Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots need to videotape the Bungles sideline in order to beat them? Do they need to cheat to beat the Cincinnati Bungles? Cincinnati's the worst fucking team in the league. The Patriots could play with 10 guys on each side of the ball and beat this Bungles team. I don't understand why it's a big deal to videotape the sidelines anyway. But KC, they're stealing signals. Who fucking cares? People in baseball have been stealing signals for 100 years. You don't think these teams know this and change their signals from week to week? In my opinion, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. The margin of error is razor thin in the NFL, more than any other professional sport. There's a reason that NFL coaches are the highest paid. They have the biggest impact on the outcome of a game. These guys are working 100 plus hours a week during the season. Seriously, how big of an impact does a Major League Baseball manager have during the game? For most baseball games, the manager is either chewing tobacco or sunflower seeds, taking a nap on the bench in the dugout. Every so often, he will walk out to the mound to make a pitching change. If an umpire makes a bad call, someone will wake the manager up to go argue with him. That's it. That's why baseball managers are the lowest paid. Anyway, I've never blamed Belichick and the Patriots for getting an advantage wherever they could. There have been reports through the years of New England bugging the opponent's locker room at Foxborough Stadium, jamming the signals in the headsets of their opponents, anything to get an advantage. I've been hearing a lot of people in mainstream sports media talk about all of these cheating scandals tainting Belichick and Brady's legacy. I could not disagree more. You can't tarnish 6 Super Bowl titles. You can't tarnish damn near 20 straight years of New England winning that division. This Patriots dynasty will never be duplicated in any sport. This will never happen again. I actually kind of like the fact that Bill Belichick is willing to do whatever it takes to win. The NFL, more so than any other league, is very strategic. The small, minute details matter. Like I said a second ago, you take any advantage that you can get. The only thing that really bothered me in terms of Patriot scandals was Deflategate. I thought that was going too far. Stealing signals, giving false information on injury reports, that's one thing. Every coach in this league falsifies an injury report. But deflating footballs is a bit much to me. I also thought that the punishment for Deflategate didn't fit the crime. Roger Goodell suspended Sean Payton for the entire 2012 season for Bountygate. The Saints defense was wagering money on making big plays. Good hits, fumbles, interceptions, sacks. That's something that happens in every NFL locker room. I thought it was absurd. He also took draft picks, which set the Saints back 2 or 3 years. It was one of the main reasons you saw 3 straight 7-9 seasons in New Orleans from 2014 to 2016. Deflategate was worse than what the Saints did. And the punishment that Goodell handed down was fucking weak. Tom Brady was suspended for 4 games, which ended up being overturned on appeal. I believe the final punishment was a $1 million fine to the Patriots, and they lost a couple of draft picks, somewhere along those lines. This is one of the primary reasons why I believe that Roger Goodell has a vendetta against the Saints. Now, I'm getting a bit off topic here. Bottom line is, I don't think New England filming the Bungles sideline is a big deal. These games are all televised anyway. And it's not like the Patriots need to cheat to beat the worst team in the NFL. All right, I've tried my best to ignore Antonio Brown lately. I actually defended this guy when the sexual assault allegations against him came out. The guy couldn't have been any luckier from a professional standpoint. He forced his way out of Oakland, and then he landed in the promised land in New England. About a week after I defended him, he ran off at the mouth again, got himself released from the Patriots. Earlier in the season, I was talking about Antonio Brown on a regular basis. But after I defended him and he embarrassed himself, I decided that I'd had enough. I just quit talking about him altogether. I didn't mention it when he sent out his apology to everybody on earth. I just didn't think it was genuine. That apology that he tweeted out was, about a month ago. And here we are in mid-December, and he's back at it again. This guy might be the most emotionally unstable man on the planet. Someone needs to take his fucking phone away from him. So after apologizing to the NFL, AB is coming out once again and saying that the league is racist. The gist of his tweets are that because Big Ben is still allowed to play in the league after his sexual assault allegations, and because other players have been arrested and they're still in the league, and that Antonio Brown hasn't been picked up by another team after all the shit he's caused, that there is some type of racial conspiracy against him. Basically, what he's saying, the white guys can get in trouble or have allegations against them. They get to keep their jobs, but the black guy is blackballed. The only person who got Antonio Brown blackballed from the NFL is Antonio Brown. Owners in the NFL aren't dealing with the diva-type players anymore. They've figured out that it's not worth it. We saw AB destroy the locker room in Pittsburgh. We all saw what he did in Oakland during training camp this year. Owners and general managers are looking for high-character guys, not guys who cause problems, no matter how talented they are. I didn't agree with Colin Kaepernick being blacklisted from the NFL, but I really think that whole situation changed the mentality in this league. The ratings plummeted after the Colin Kaepernick situation. They lost sponsors. People were upset about him kneeling for the national anthem. They tuned out in droves. The NFL is just now recovering from that. So I think in the current NFL, they want players who aren't going to cause problems and impact ratings in the bottom line. I've never understood why these diva wide receivers think that they're the most important player on the roster. You don't see behavior like this from other positions. Terrell Owens caused problems wherever he went throughout his career. Randy Moss did the same thing. They thought they were the reason for their team's success. Now, you can't take it away from them. They were a big part of the success. But if you're a wide receiver, if you don't have a great quarterback throwing you the ball, then you're irrelevant. Just ask Randy Moss about his time in Oakland if you don't believe me. Antonio Brown's NFL career is over. He has sabotaged his own career. There isn't a team in this league that's going to take the risk to sign him. And the New England Patriots could use him right now. The only team in the league that might sign AB is the Cleveland Browns. The Browns seem to love high-drama players. Other than the Browns, the only other way that AB plays professional football again is going to be in the XFL or the CFL. And I highly doubt that his ego is going to let him do that. All right, I'm going to close out with a little bit of NBA. We witnessed a rarity in sports Wednesday night, especially in terms of the NBA. In the NFL, franchise quarterbacks rarely leave their team. Tom Brady started and is most likely going to end his career in New England. Same with Aaron Rodgers. Tony Romo spent his entire career in Dallas. Instances like Peyton Manning leaving Indianapolis for Denver or Brett Favre leaving for Green Bay aren't as common. In both of those instances, the team had drafted their replacements and neither one of those guys was ready to give up football. But in the NBA, it's different. In the NFL, market size doesn't matter like it does in the NBA. The league is so popular, a guy like Drew Brees can spend the majority of his career in New Orleans, a small market team, and still get big time endorsement deals and mainstream media attention. It's not like that in the NBA. If you want to be a mainstream superstar in the NBA, you've got to play in a big market. LeBron James is an exception. He was a huge star entering the league, so he could go to Cleveland and still be a mega star. It's not like that for the majority of the players in the league. Players in the NBA right now have more power than at any other point in the history of the league. They're forming super teams. They have more power now to play where they want to play and with who they want to play with. It seems like just about every offseason we see the same thing. A guy is drafted to Orlando, for example, New Orleans, Indiana, Oklahoma City. He becomes a superstar. He plays through his rookie contract, and then he wants out. Small market team feels abandoned. The fan base feels like they've been jilted by this player. Superstar player returns to that city with his new team at some point during the regular season, and he gets booed out of the building. It happened when LeBron returned to Cleveland when he was playing with the Heat. Happened when Dwight Howard got traded to the Lakers and returned to Orlando. When Kevin Durant returned to Oklahoma City. Hell, it happened a couple of weeks ago when Anthony Davis returned to New Orleans. It did not happen Wednesday night in Toronto. Kawhi Leonard made his return for the first time since he left. Even though he brought the city, and Canada for that matter, their first NBA title, I wouldn't have been surprised if he was booed a little bit. I would have understood if the fan base in Toronto was upset with him for only staying for 1 year and then leaving. They did everything they could over the summer to get him to stay. But instead of booing, instead of vitriol, Toronto rolled out the red carpet for Kawhi upon his return. He was the last player introduced during player introductions and pregame. They even prepared a 2-minute video package for him before his introduction. The roof blew off the building when his name was called. And you could tell it meant a lot to Kawhi Leonard. The city of Toronto showed their appreciation of him, and honestly, they showed their class. There's a big difference here between Kawhi Leonard and other superstars who have left their teams. Kawhi did everything right. It's not just about the championship, though that plays a big part in it. Don't get me wrong. But Kawhi never led the Raptors on. We all knew he wasn't staying in Toronto. He didn't demand a trade midseason. He didn't cause a big fuss when San Antonio traded him there the summer before. He didn't divide the locker room. Not one player for the Raptors has anything bad to say about Kawhi Leonard. He showed up. He was pleasant. He won him a championship. And then he left to go home to play in Los Angeles. He did everything right. Now compare that with how Anthony Davis left New Orleans or how Dwight Howard's departure in Orlando went. Both did everything wrong. AD tanked the season last year in New Orleans. Dwight Howard went to management and tried to get Stan Van Gundy fired without anyone knowing. And then it blew up in his face. I mean, there was that awkward exchange between him and Stan Van Gundy before that game against the Knicks when they were asking Van Gundy if Dwight Howard had got him fired. And Van Gundy was just honest about it. And then Dwight Howard walks up, puts his arm around his coach, saying everything's all good. It was weird. Who could forget it? This just proves to me that it's not the superstar player wanting to leave. It's how they go about it. It matters. Kawhi obviously learned his lesson the first time with how he left San Antonio. He did everything right with the way he left the Raptors. All right, that's all for today, guys. I'll be back tomorrow morning with my NFL picks for Sunday. We'll also have Gerald Brigade joining us tomorrow to talk some NBA. Follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. Leave me that 5-star rating on iTunes. I will see you guys in the morning.